Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to use timers in FoxVox. First off, let's create a new timer output. Go in the output, select timer, and enable the timer. First thing is to set the duration. Let's choose 5, and then choose your units, seconds, minutes, or hours. Go with seconds. You can choose to keep the timer open, so when it reaches its limit that the timer remains open, and when it does, as it reaches its limit, it will flash and then it will stay on. Or by default, it will close and go away once it's reached its threshold. If you turn it on, you have a couple other options. You can have it have it an infinite timer, which keeps it running after it reaches its duration. And you can also choose to have the timer repeat automatically once it reaches duration, in which case, in a 5-second timer, once it reaches 5, we'll begin a new count up to 5 again. And if you do want to have it repeat, you can have it repeat after a certain amount of time elapses before repeating. Okay, in this case, we'll let it go ahead and close once it's done. Another option is to count up. Normally, by default, timers are a count down, but they can count up as well if you enable that option. To view your timer, let's go ahead and turn on a preview, and timer should appear at some location on the screen. If you don't see the timer appear, there's a button here that says reset position. If you click that reset position, the timer will be sent to the 00 or left topmost coordinates of the main monitor. The other thing we can do with the timer is associate it with a process. If you have a process that's running when a timer displays on your screen, if you lock it to that process, it will move with that. So for example, here I have Notepad running, and you'll see the timer is independent. Let's go ahead and lock that process to Notepad. And it will jump in terms of its relation with position to the application. So let's reposition that, and now you'll see that it's locked with my Notepad application. So you can associate it with a process that locks it to it. Along with that, you can also put an additional descriptor to identify the correct window. If no descriptor is set, it will be the default window of the application process. But bear in mind that the default window may be invisible or may be hidden, or a window that you don't see, in which case you might not be able to control or see where that timer is going to go. So you might not be on the right window, in which case you'd need to use the title or caption of the window to locate it. In the case of Notepad, the application itself is the default window, so we don't have to do that, but you can specify that. And also, by way of note, when you specify the window, you do not need to have the full matching title. It'll match on keywords. So in the case of Notepad, if I used the word Notepad, which is located or found within the title, that would find the Notepad window. So in the case of FoxVox, for example, if I bound it to the FoxVox process, a lot of times an application will have like the open file as part of the name, or a version, or something that you don't want to match. FoxVox would be sufficient. Just one or more words that you want to match in the title, and it actually performs a search. So it doesn't have to be the full thing. So keep that in mind. Finally, we have another setting, which is the anchor position relative to the window. So by default, it's anchored to the upper left corner of the application. So when I move it, it moves with that corner, but we can change that. Let's go ahead and move it to the bottom right. Now you'll see that as I move, it still moves with the application, but it's tied to the lower right corner movement and not the upper left. Okay, and you can choose any position on the window that you want, where you want that bound. You'll notice the timer is set to be on top as an overlay of other windows. And this gives it the ability to be presented above, but also by way of note, if you have an application that is a full screen exclusive, the overlay won't show over that full screen exclusive application. So, and many games take advantage of this, so not every game is going to be compatible with timer overlays. So another thing to keep in mind, you might have to display it on a separate monitor or somewhere else if the application you're trying to display over is a full screen exclusive. Okay, so we've got our timer displayed. And again, I showed you how it is locked to an application. I'm going to go ahead and you notice when it's locked to an application, if you close the application, it will close out the window. Let's reset and reposition here, and let's clear it from the application. Something you can do as well is lock the position. So once you've decided where you want to be, you'll notice that no longer do I get the move cursor over the timer and I can't reposition that. So in order to position it, it has to be unlocked. Once you have it where you want it to be, then you can lock the position. Another option is to show the timer name. By default, the timer doesn't have a name and it's just called timer. If you choose to show that timer name, it will appear above the timer. And that name can be helpful in differentiating or indicating what timer it is that's being shown in the case that you want to see multiple timers at the same time. The name is also important when you want to do timer functions on the controls. To the right here you can see you've got a set of manual controls for pause, resume, reset, and closing the timer. You can also access and control these using the timer control buttons at the bottom of the command. You do not have to have a timer available in order to use those controls. These are separate and independent but can be located on the command. And when you select an operation, it asks for the name of the timer. If you do not supply a name, then it affects all open timers. Otherwise, you can supply the name, and all timers that are all timers with that name will be affected by the operation that you perform. Okay, part of the if you don't want those manual controls to display, you can also turn those off. And you'll notice that if they are turned off, you can no longer resize the timer as well. So if you lock the position and you hide the controls, then your timer is something you no longer can interact with, and it's just in a fixed position. The display you can choose if you want to see the hours, minutes, seconds, and milliseconds. You can check and uncheck any of the set areas that don't apply. For example, if you're only going to be doing seconds, perhaps you want to see just the seconds and the milliseconds on a countdown. But you can choose how you want the timer to look based on the duration. You can also choose its theme. By default, you can match the application. So if FoxVox is dark theme, you're going to get a dark theme timer. And you'll notice dark theme works really well on top of white backgrounds or dark backgrounds. So, but you do get a little bit more standout if you do it on over a dark background. And you can override that. You want to force a light theme, you can force on a light theme, which of course changes it. So again, depending on the game or the app that you want to display the timer, you can choose what its color is. Or at least what its theme is, I'm sorry. And the color, you do have some control on the timer as to the completed color. So when a timer elapses, as I said, it will flash and show that particular color. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And you can see that we have it set to the default red, but you can change that. And again, that's also handy when you want to see different timers that have different meanings. Again, the color applies to the timer after it's elapsed and become completed. It turns to the completed color. Something else you can control is the background. The transparent background can be controlled to make it opaque for better or higher visibility. And you can also do the same with the foreground if you want the timer to blend into its environment and just be sort of like a watermark or not quite as obtrusive. You can control that as well. Okay, so once you've got your timer set up the way you want it, go ahead and create the output. And you can use either a voice command or a key command to launch the timer. Let's go ahead and do a voice-controlled timer. Okay, so based on our keys, we can say show a timer, display a timer, start a timer. All of those should get us a timer. And let's put a timer on our output. Okay, let's go ahead and give that a try. Show a timer. And there you go. So we can see that we showed our timer, it did the countdown and then went off. Again, you can configure the settings how you'd like. bind them to any command on voice or key control, and you have the basic functionality of a timer.